Since today is Bell Let's Talk, I thought I would take a few minutes and share a little bit about my experience, and because I thought I haven't spoken much about what has happened to me, and I thought that it's important that we there's so much that is said about PTSD and mental health, and often we hear about all the negative things, and we don't hear enough about those who are able to move on, and we need to hear more about those stories, and because there are many out there who are suffering, and by sharing a little bit of the light, some of the good stories, some of those who have been able to overcome, maybe we can bring some hope to those who are suffering. My story is one that started over 2.5 years ago. I was a senior public affairs officer. I've served on missions in Afghanistan and Haiti. I'm a naval officer. I was a naval officer. I retired 3 months ago on a medical category. But I guess what I want to focus on is the fact that and we've heard of that not all injuries that lead to post-traumatic stress disorder are physical. What I mean is that post-traumatic stress disorder is not in itself an injury. It's normally an injury that leads us to that disorder. And in my case, the injuries that resulted in the post-traumatic stress disorder, which I was diagnosed with 2.5 years ago, were not physical injuries at all. I wasn't even aware that I had sustained those injuries until the diagnostic. So I lived with those injuries for many years until I discovered that I had them, and they went on untreated. And so these injuries can be quite insidious. In my case, the injuries are called moral injuries. It sounds kind of innocuous when you hear that term, moral injuries. We live in a world today that is quite. We hear the term materialistic. When we hear that term, we think of spending money, but materialistic in the philosophical world is a term that relates to material, to things you can touch and measure, and where those are things that you can use a scientific method in order to assess. And the problems with a moral injury is that it's not something you can easily measure. Those relate to things that a person has experienced or has seen, who has felt, and then that has deeply affected them. And it could be maybe in some cases it might be one event, but in most cases it's well, I shouldn't say most cases, but it can often be the result of many repeated events. If I can give you an idea, it can relate to many injuries that have nothing to do with military life. A woman who has suffered a rape would definitely suffer from a moral injury. Now, in that case, there is physical injury as well, but the moral injury in that case is often more severe than the physical injury that has been suffered, if you can understand what is meant there. If I relate to a case that is well known, that most people are aware of, a gentleman that I've come to, that I have met and have come to admire, General Dallaire, retired General Dallaire, Roméo Dallaire, who was a senator as well, who served on a mission in Rwanda, did not suffer any physical injuries. He wasn't harmed from a bullet wound or, hit with a machete or any of those things. But he suffers from very severe post-traumatic stress disorder. And his type of injuries are definitely related to what is termed moral injuries. I have read his latest book, published in 2016, Waiting for First Light, and cried through most of that book. And the subtitle of that book is my ongoing battle with PTSD. And I identified very much with his struggles. All the quality of his struggle is similar to what I've experienced, although the quantity is on a completely different planet than what I understand. It is an incredible story that General Dallaire went through in Rwanda. I can't even imagine what he went through. But just so we understand what the human mind is sometimes faced with in the face of certain experiences, and then sometimes because of a feeling of helplessness or a feeling of betrayal, or it can be a whole different types of emotion like that, and then you become, there's a lot of anger and guilt sometimes, and a whole bunch of other factors, and it can stay with you for the rest of your life. And those injuries can be very, very severe. So this is the type of injury that I have sustained and still suffer from, and then that developed into post-traumatic stress disorder. I was not aware I suffered from these injuries, and carried on with my career until the spring of 2006, and then an event happened at work, and which caused me, it was what we call, it's called in psychology a triggering event. And I was, I guess what is, colloquialism, some uncommon parlance, I flipped out. I became very, very angry. I reacted irrationally. At the time, I simply, please forgive my dog. He just reacted to a dog walking just outside of the window, and he's just being a guard dog, so just let him bark a little, and he'll stop in a minute. So anyways, so just long and short of it I had this triggering event that left a deep mark on me, and it affected me Oakley, that's enough. That's enough. So, so from that moment, I became so angry at the situation that I felt compelled to leave the Canadian military, and I had put in my voluntary release, and I saw my doctor the following day. Now, a parallel with this story, I had already been experiencing a lot of symptoms, physical symptoms, because when one is not dealing with your mental health issues, even though you're not aware of them, your body is still aware of them, and your body is trying to compensate. And so I had been experiencing a lot of different physical ailments over quite a few years that I had not, a lot of different health issues. And in some ways I thought maybe I was just getting old. But later on, it was confirmed that these had all been related to the stress caused by my unresolved mental health issues. And so these went from everything from skin problems. I had heart palpitations, some severe anxiety attacks. I ended up in emergency at the hospital thinking that I had a heart attack at one point. I ended up having surgery because of excess bleeding, internal bleeding, and some of these symptoms are still continuing on and being treated today. I have had surgery as a result of some of these unresolved, some of these issues. So that's how severe the body can react to some unresolved mental stress issues related to stress because of unresolved operational stress injuries. All related to these invisible injuries. So it's very insidious, and I have learned a lot over the last it's coming up to 3 years. It'll be 3 years this spring now since that triggering event, and I was diagnosed with significant post-traumatic stress disorder in the late summer of 2016. So that's been almost 2.5 years now. So all this to say that I have had to undergo a significant amount of therapy. At the beginning, there was 35 hours of various therapies per week in order to handle the immediate concerns, and then and a lot of medication, and but the key factor was to get help and to recognize that there was a problem, and one of the factors that needs to be addressed is our culture in the military. It took a long time for my issues for me to face my issues, and also for the military health community to recognize that I had that the symptoms were related to mental health because of our culture. it was maybe made worse in my case because of my personality. Uh, because I'm in, like they say in French, je suis une tête de cochon. I can be very stubborn, and I just kept soldiering on despite, going through a lot of pain in some cases, and just kept going. But my doctor had told me about 6 months before I had my breakdown that I needed to maybe reconsider my career, that my job was quote unquote killing me. And at the time I felt I didn't think there was any options for me. Now there was a combination of misinformation. I didn't even think there was any options for me open at the time because of for administrative purposes. I didn't think there was an opportunity for me to have a medical release. I thought the only option was I didn't think I would qualify anyways. But since he told me my job was killing me, maybe that should have been a key word, and maybe the medical community should have been more proactive with that avenue with me, since they told me that then. But I thought my only option was to voluntary release, and my administrative situation at the time did not allow me to voluntarily release without having a very severe penalty on my pension. So I did not stop, and I kept going. And because I kept going, that's when I had the severe breakdown. And then when I did show up to see my medical officer after the breakdown, and I told him what happened, and then I told him that I could not go back to work. And I explained to him at the time. I said, listen, I said, if I go back to work, and I said I'm going to hurt somebody. And I was in earnest when I told him that. I was in a bad way. And what he told me, the way he responded to me, was terrible, because he told me that then his answer to me was, "You shouldn't tell me this." Now I'm at the time I was the second highest ranking officer in that public affairs shop at the Navy headquarters in Ottawa, and I've been around. I was writing messages for every topic of the Canadian Forces. And when he told me that, now I wasn't, no expert in mental health, but I had heard enough about mental health that when I heard him say that to me, I just about lost it. I said, you must be, and I used an expletive then because I was so angry. I said, you must be effing kidding. Are you out of your mind? I said, I just told you something, and I am in earnest, and you're telling me to just shut up and go keep it to myself? You're my doctor. Who else am I supposed to tell if I can't tell you this? And here I felt, at this point I felt my whole chain of command had, because of this situation that led to my breakdown, I felt my chain of command had let me down. And here I felt the whole Canadian Force Health Service let me down by the way that this guy had been treating me. Because first of all, he hadn't told me that there was any option other than voluntary release. And now he's telling me that I can't tell him truly how I feel. And then I was about to just storm out of there, and then finally, and the truth was I liked this doctor. I actually liked this doctor. And so talk about betrayal. And this is to a guy who has a moral injury, who feels he can't trust the people that are around him, who's already paranoid. What are you supposed to do? So this is the sad part of the story. This is not where I'm going to end here, okay? Because this doctor had the wits to turn around, and finally the light came on, and he says, Alain, he says, I'm deeply sorry. He finally recognized. He says, you just don't. He says, I just didn't realize how severe this all was. And then all of a sudden he turned around. He says, listen. He says, you don't have to put in your voluntary release. He says, I'm going to put you on sick leave from this moment. And he says, you're not going back to work no matter what. He says, you're going to get all of the care that you need. We're going to find out what's the matter with you. And he says, and if you're not happy with where you're at in 6 months from now, he says, I guarantee you that we will find some way of getting you a medical discharge. And then I thought, well, because he told me, he says, don't put in your voluntary release. So I don't know if he was promising more than he could at the time, or he was just desperate. But I felt, okay, what can I lose? And then that was the beginning of a new kind of relationship with this doctor. And I within a few months, I was officially diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and went through all of a lot of therapy. And for those of you who know me and you're hearing me speak right now, you know that this is not the old Alain Blondin. I stutter now. I have a different voice. I have lost a lot of my charm. I can never go back to work in public affairs because I don't have the fluidity, and I cannot handle multitasking. My mind can't. I just wouldn't be able to do the job. I actually tried doing. I can't even do admin work anymore. But that's okay. I don't think I would want to anyways. And I've turned that page a year and a half ago when I finally realized that it was time for me to move on. And this is sometimes, when one door closes, another door opens, and that's part of the good news. And when I realized that, sadly I would have to hang up the uniform, and I was getting close to retirement age anyways. I needed to move on and find new things to do, and that's part of the fulcrum of this story, where we move on into the happy side of it. I went through a significant amount of therapy, both psychotherapy and drug therapy with a psychiatrist and a psychotherapist. And after about a year, I was able to lessen things on the drug therapy and focus on the psychotherapy. And I'm happy to report that I am now completely off the drug therapy and focused all on psychotherapy, and not only psychotherapy, but I get a massage therapy. All homeopathy, I guess is what people would call it. I focus on drugless therapy. The PTSD will be with me for the rest of my life, but it doesn't stop me from being able to enjoy my life. I have now changed gears from a military life to a civilian life. I am now able to go back to some previous skills. I am I have a lot of God-given gifts when it comes to my ability to reason things, and I'm still able to write. So I am writing a book right now. The title is "You Can't Do That," and so it's going to be to show the paradox between. Well, it's not quite a paradox. Maybe more of a synthesis. Yeah, which is completely different than a paradox. But the how we go through life, trying to prove ourselves, and showing, how people are often try to put us down and try to stop us, and we can overcome by keeping the right attitude. And I know I've experienced that through my life, where you either you're told straight out that you can't do that, or people are trying to limit your opportunities, and then you just prove them wrong, and you move on, and which has happened to me many times through my life, and then the great reward to one's sense of well-being and one's self-worth by overcoming those obstacles, because yes, you can do that. You can do anything you want when you put your mind to it. Because when I overcame the need to take that medicine, despite what some people and some psychiatrists were telling me, and then I decided on my own that I was going to get rid of that things, and I did it, and now I'm drug free, and that's been well over a year now. So yes, I could do that, and I did. So that is possible. And now through psychotherapy and mindfulness is something that I'm pursuing in my approach to psychotherapy. The power of mindfulness therapy, and a strong focus on spirituality. I find that I can achieve a whole lot more for myself in terms of finding new goals for my life, and also because there's a lot when you've lost, and it depends. This all depends on where you are in life. I was already close to retirement. It may be a whole different story for someone who this has happened to them when they're like 35 instead of 56 or 57. But you have to find your own place. And but in my case, I feel I have a whole new world. And I've also spent over 20 years as a civilian, so I've already proven to myself that I can survive in this big bad civilian world. I don't need the military to make me live. I can survive out here fine, and I'm going to keep doing that. And I enjoy the freedom of expression that's out here. I felt a little bit constrained on the military side, but and I'm going to do that. And now there's the other side of you can't do that, and this is where maybe I found I became injured, is that once you've established your your self-worth, and even more than that, where you've established yourself as credible, where you have some authority and respectability, then you have not only the authority and respectability, but you have the responsibility towards society. Something just dropped. I think it's okay. I'll just finish this. Do we have the responsibility towards, it was my, it was my case with my sword in it. We have the responsibility towards society to act when we see something that is not up to par. And the best way to illustrate that is from when I spent time with the Royal Canadian Regiment in my training for Afghanistan and my time in Afghanistan. Their motto is never pass a fault. And basically, so that would be the second part of the meaning behind my title of my book, You Can't Do That, is when you pass by something and you see something that is not right, and it's to step in and say, hey, you can't do that. And now, when you do that, that means you have to invest yourself, and it's going to cost you. You can't do that lightly. You have, because it takes moral authority, but it doesn't. A lot of people talk about moral courage, but it takes a certain amount of moral authority to do that, but moral responsibility, moral courage. But when it's all said and done, it may end up costing you. And are you willing to pay the price? And I guess that's where the moral courage comes in, because this is where, because when you do have that moral injury, later on, when all's said and done, are you going to have regrets? And this is where I'm going to close here, because when I look back and I look at those times where I did interject and I ended up getting hurt, and now I look at what it's cost me, I have no regrets. No regrets. All right? Because if I had to do it over again, I would. Because what else can you do? Is it Edmund Burke that said, all that is necessary for evil to prevail is that he said good men, but I would say good people do nothing in the face of evil. When you see something wrong, damn it, you have to step in. You can't just ignore it. I know I can't. And now I won, and I was successful in fixing quite a few things during my career, and there was other times when I was not successful in it, and I got hurt. But it's par for the course. You got to keep going. You got to keep doing what you got to do because of the person you are, and that's the true test of who you are as a person. And because what kind of person are you when nobody's looking, nobody's watching, and that's all that matters. All right. So, and in the end, that's what makes me sleep at night, because that's what is the true fiber of what a person is made of. So thanks for listening, and I hope I didn't bore you too much, but that's my little talk today. Thanks. God bless.